It is 11 p.m., March 2018. In the quiet, air-conditioned VIP lounge of the Dubai International Airport, a businessman sits waiting. An officer from Indian intelligence walks in, carrying a small briefcase and a very specific message. The officer tells the businessman that the Prime Minister has sent a message. A 72-hour countdown has officially started. Over the next 3 days, the Indian government is going to move to reclaim 38,000 crore rupees of hidden wealth, and they are going to do it without firing a single shot or sending in the military. To understand how they pulled this off, we have to look at the massive leak this operation was designed to plug. Between 1991 and 2014, over 5 lakh crore rupees of black money was quietly siphoned out of the Indian economy. The preferred method for moving this mountain of cash was the Hawala system, which you can see outlined in this diagram. It operates entirely on trust and proxy calls. You hand physical cash to a local broker, they make a single phone call, and their partner overseas hands the equivalent amount to your receiver. The money never physically crosses a border, and it completely bypasses central banks and paper trails. And the primary destination for all this untraceable wealth was Dubai. With its absolute zero-tax environment and ironclad financial secrecy laws, it functioned as a fortress for India's richest tax evaders to stash their money in luxury properties and anonymous shell companies. For decades, previous Indian governments hit a solid brick wall trying to get that money back. India simply had no legal jurisdiction to compel the United Arab Emirates, a sovereign nation that built its economy on being a secure financial haven, to open up its private banking records. That barrier stood until 2014, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi's new administration took office and decided to treat the offshore black money problem as a matter of national security. To execute this, Modi brought in Ajit Doval as National Security Advisor. Doval spent 7 years deep undercover in Pakistan. He knew from first-hand experience that standard police work and strongly worded legal requests were entirely useless against international financial borders. Extracting this cash would require something far sharper. They needed a diplomatic masterstroke that could convince a foreign government to prioritize a bilateral governorship over its own internal secrecy protocols. The first major breakthrough came when an officer realized they didn't need to crack the banks. They just needed to look at the Dubai Land Department. It was the single, centralized registry holding the true ownership records of every piece of real estate in the city. Getting access to that ledger required high-level political leverage. In 2015, PM Modi made a landmark visit to the UAE, engaging in intense personal diplomacy with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed. This resulted in the Information Exchange Agreement. This mechanism effectively automated the flow of financial data between the two nations, allowing Indian tax authorities to cross-reference their domestic files with the UAE's property and banking registries in real time. With the legal pathway cleared, Doval assembled a specialized super squad. He brought in RAW, the Income Tax Department, the Enforcement Directorate, and the Financial Intelligence Unit, merging them into a single, highly coordinated strike team. On the left, a modest domestic tax return. On the right, UAE data shows that same person owns a massive Dubai skyscraper. The system connects the dots, instantly proving money laundering. Scaling this up exposed 800 targets holding 38,000 crore. The board was set. In March 2018, PM Modi gave the final authorization and the 72-hour countdown began. During hours 0 to 24, the Indian agencies infiltrated Dubai. To avoid tipping off the billionaires they were hunting, the agents flew in entirely separately, staggering their arrivals on different commercial flights. Once on the ground, they held quiet meetings with UAE anti-money laundering officers. Working off the matched data lists, they silently locked down the specific bank accounts tied to the 800 targets. Hours 24 to 48 were pure panic for the targets. Word started leaking out through their local legal teams that Indian officers were in the city. The targets immediately tried to wire their funds out to safe havens, only to find their transactions rejected. The offshore accounts were already frozen solid. Decades of relying on expensive lawyers and political connections meant nothing. In a foreign jurisdiction where the government had already flipped the switch on their money, they were completely powerless. In the final 24 hours, the Indian task force presented a simple, brutal ultimatum. quietly sign a binding legal settlement to return the money and pay the penalty, or face public exposure and prosecution in the UAE court system. One major target, a businessman named Rastogi, had openly laughed at the initial notices, assuming his Dubai money was untouchable. Presented with the frozen accounts, his resistance collapsed. He sat down and signed a settlement worth 2,300 Crore rupees. This overwhelming legal leverage dismantled years of practiced arrogance in a matter of hours. The targets realized they were trapped in a room with no exits, but the operation's thoroughness was truly tested by a target we'll call Crore. Realizing his money was stuck, Crore decided to flee the jurisdiction entirely. He prepped his private jet for an immediate takeoff to London, where extradition would be a nightmare. But Ra had already mapped out the flight risks. They had coordinated with UAE airport authorities in advance. When Crore arrived to board his jet, the system flagged his passport and slammed the gates shut. He was under a hard travel ban. Intelligence officers later noted that if Crore had decided to leave just 6 hours earlier, he would have cleared airspace, taking his 4,100 Crore rupees with him. Grounded and cornered, Crore capitulated. The operation proved that every physical and legal exit had been systematically closed off. By the end of that 72-hour window, the task force had secured binding legal settlements for much of that 38,000 Crore rupees. While the actual bank transfers would take longer to process, the Indian government now held the frozen assets as collateral, making the final recovery a certainty. This execution proved that cross-referencing financial intelligence and applying targeted diplomacy could be wielded just as effectively as a military strike. The 2018 sting established a new precedent. By weaponizing data sharing